What is going on, guys? Andrew of New Bar Gaming back here, and today we're going to be starting a new segment for the channel known as New Bar News, where I'm going to be bringing you some of the articles I found most interesting in the world of gaming from this week. Now, to start off today's segment, let's talk a little about the Nintendo Switch online service and the possibility of them bringing Super Nintendo games to it. Now, for a little bit of a summary on what's going on with the Nintendo Switch online service, currently it's $20 a month. If you subscribe to it, you get access to a library of NES games instantly that you can basically play at your fingertips. Now, I like the NES a lot, but a lot of people I would talk to seem to agree that the Super Nintendo is really where gaming started to hit its run in terms of being able to be done at home with a really nice experience in terms of depth, storytelling, etc. And that's where a lot of standards started to be set up, versus the NES was kind of getting that transition away from games that purely relied on scores and such to proceed forward. The Super Nintendo kind of started to see the rise of RPGs and such, and like these story-based games, which I think is really awesome. I have nothing against the NES, I love that console. But anyway, back to the subject at hand here. So a data miner recently found hints within some of Nintendo's coding that may reveal they're working on setting up roughly 22 SNES games to be sent to the Switch's online service, and those titles would include Super Mario Kart, Super Soccer, The Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past, Demon's Crest, Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island, Stunt Race FX, Kirby's Dream Course, Pop and Twin B, Star Fox, Contra 3: The Alien Wars, Kirby Superstar, Super Ghouls and Ghosts, Kirby's Dream Land 3, Super Metroid, Super Mario World, Pilot Wings, F-Zero, Star Fox 2, Super Punch-Out, The Legend of the Mystical Ninja, Super Mario All-Stars, and Breath of Fire 2. And this list more or less represents a lot of what are considered the best games for the system. I mean, obviously you're missing some titles that are amongst the best. I mean, a personal favorite of mine will always be Chrono Trigger. But adding to that, we also have the fact that a lot of these games came out on the Super Nintendo Classic already. Just counting from what I remember of the Super Nintendo Classic's library, I mean, I do own one. 13 of these 22 titles are already on the Super Nintendo Classic, and considering the Super Nintendo Classic is relatively easy to obtain in stores right now, as somebody who really believes part of the retro gaming experience is actually like turning on a system with a similar form factor, having that controller in your hands, watching like the screen and its weird resolution and everything else, I far prefer the Super Nintendo Classic in that I at least get the controller and something that's similar to an actual Super Nintendo in my hand, even if it is scaled down, as opposed to powering on the Switch, which feels so much more modern and playing with a Switch controller. Now, for those of you that do really enjoy the idea of having access to these games through Nintendo's online service, I can let you know that 8BitDo does make a wireless controller that functions similar to a Super Nintendo controller, and that has a very similar form factor. They just kind of slapped on two analog sticks in between the two rounded parts of the controller, and that I'm sure would at least do part of the trick in terms of adding to the, retro gaming experience aspect of it. So on the whole, guys, I would say Nintendo's doing a pretty good job and has the right idea in mind in terms of using these games to sort of supplement the fact that they've more or less removed Virtual Console from the Switch. And I think it's not a bad idea, especially if you're not paying more than $20 a month. I mean, heck, if they're throwing games at you for something you're already paying for, why should I be complaining? But at the same time, I understand that we're kind of already getting a lot of games we already have access to. The Super Nintendo Classic is still pretty readily available on store shelves right now, and once more, I would more prefer that, but this gives another option to people looking for that same experience that once more is legal. I know emulators and ROMs are rampant, so you can obviously access it other ways, but this is a legal way, and that genuinely is a large deal, and that's pretty awesome of Nintendo to be at least acknowledging the fact that we do want to play these games, we do want to see these titles, and I'm hoping maybe somewhere down the line they can get licensing the titles like Chrono Trigger that are big-time classics on the Super Nintendo that we don't have easy access to playing right now without owning a classic Super Nintendo and then hunting through eBay or like local game shops to find an old cartridge, especially one with a save that still works or changing the battery or what have you. So let's go ahead and move on to our second article, and this one's going to be reaching out a lot more to PlayStation fans out there. Now, remember that game The Last of Us that came out several years ago for the PlayStation 3 and was making a lot of ripples in terms of being one of the better zombie games ever made, and just so happened to be exclusive to PlayStation, and we've been kind of waiting on a sequel for quite some time now? Well, it seems like that sequel may be happening this year. There were already some hints last year when some tracks from its supposed soundtrack were released with a 2019 release date type of thing in parentheses next to the title, and now hinting at that even more, there was a PlayStation news article this week that included a series of tweets from the journalist Elena Pierce, which have now been deleted, which state that the game had a 2019 launch date in mind. All this seems to sort of be hinting towards that probably coming to us. I think it'd be pretty awesome. I have yet to play the original The Last of Us title, but I've heard it's really great. I'm still kind of catching up on a lot of more recent gaming stuff from the past 5 to 10 years because I kind of fell behind for a little bit, but it seems like it's a really great game, and as somebody who recently bought a PlayStation 4 and has been super into that, watching a sequel come out to a game that I really want to play and I can get pretty cheap would be awesome. PlayStation's really been hitting it out of the park lately when it comes to cinematic, like single-player games with really good storytelling, really good soundtracks, and just an overall great feel to them. I mean, look at Spider-Man, look at God of War just this year alone, both of which were huge successes and have won a number of awards. Which is going to pull us into the second half of this article. The PlayStation 4 has been having an absolute ton of success. Its sales, if they continue to track the way they currently are set on course for it to be able to surpass the original PlayStation and the Wii, which are two of the greatest selling consoles of all time. I mean, it's at over 90 million sales, which is insane to begin with. They're making a good bit of money off this console, but with Xbox and Nintendo having already basically slated out what their next gen's things are going to be, Nintendo having already released the Switch, and then Xbox basically continuously talking about their next project with like project names being leaked and everything else, we can assume PlayStation 5 will be coming out probably next time, sometime in the next 5 years for certain, probably much sooner than that. And going alongside that, PlayStation has announced that they are hiring a new staff software engineer, or at least looking for one. And the job description reads as follows. This is a high visibility technical leadership position with Sony Interactive Entertainment Platform Engineering Organization to establish a highly available, fault-tolerant, globally distributed data platform and services. And the article basically goes on to read how this person will be working a lot with PlayStation Network, upgrading its systems, and continuing to working with the older features of the network. And this would make a lot of sense that they're continuing to try to upgrade PlayStation Network to provide the best experience possible, keep them ahead of the competitors the way they seem to be right now in terms of the market. And that would make, once more, a lot of sense, right? But, once more, we also have to bear in mind that they are probably prepping for the next generation, so perhaps this person is there to upgrade PlayStation Network for the PlayStation 5 when it is eventually released. So it's hard to say. A lot of speculations are kind of mixed on when Sony will release the PlayStation 5. On the one hand, PlayStation 4 is super successful, cranking out a lot of great games still. The visuals are absolutely stellar. It's got a really nice cinematic universe. Developers seem to know what they're doing with it. It seems to be going well. And Sony's history in terms of consoles seems to show that they can win a lot of these things on the tail end of console generations. The PlayStation 2 kept trucking a lot longer than anyone would have anticipated. The PlayStation 3 really shone through at the end of last console generation, and the PlayStation 4 is already dominating right now, and that strength seems to grow with each day, right? But on the other side of that, their competitors are showing off that, hey, we've got this new technology getting ready to come out, right? With Xbox and Nintendo having already released the Switch. You've got new technology gradually presenting itself. I mean, 8K is something in development right now. 4K seems to be getting worked with a lot more here recently and being improved. I don't know if that will necessarily get to a point where they can't run it through like a PS4 Pro the way they are right now. Developers might be looking to push games limits a lot more like they always are. So you have to kind of weigh both ends here from a company standpoint of, do we continue what we know, continue to be pushing our current generation system, or do we open up a new one? Regardless, Sony's making a good amount of money. I like what they're doing so far, but as somebody who recently got a PlayStation 4 and is absolutely blown away by it, I hope the console isn't coming to its death quite yet. My guess would be 2020 or 2021 for the release date of the PlayStation 5, but we'll just have to wait and see on that one. So let's go ahead and progress through to our third article of the day, guys. Now, this third article is probably the strangest of all to me, and that's the idea of Verizon working on their own video game streaming service, and apparently it's something they've already started alpha testing with the Nvidia Shield, to results that they're at least relatively satisfied with, or at least that's the impression I'm getting. Now, bearing all that in mind, supposedly the end goal would be able to be get games streamed to devices like the Nvidia Shield and then like Android smartphones, right? And have those paired with like an Xbox One controller type of setup. So kind of similar to what some people are already using like Amazon Fire Sticks to do, and the Nvidia Shield to some extent with like Steam Link. But the idea is you can outright stream games like Netflix is the impression I'm under. And some companies have already tried to experiment with this, but the main problem is getting a strong enough internet signal that you can actually successfully do that. I mean, some companies have already outright tried it in a sense like PlayStation with the PlayStation 4 to PlayStation Vita remote play type of thing. Theoretically, you can have your PlayStation 4 powered on at home running a game and stream that game to your PlayStation Vita from wherever. Problem is internet, and then like your internet connection being strong enough that you don't experience so much lag that the game is literally unplayable. So, whether or not this will actually work is something we're just going to have to wait and see on. We do have a number of big companies starting to get behind the streaming idea and at least toy with it in Verizon, Microsoft, then you've got Sony, Amazon, and Electronic Arts. So, if all of them are trying and experimenting with the technology, that would imply to me that maybe we are on the verge of some breakthrough with it. But for the time being, it does seem to be something a little bit too new to get functioning properly. I am somebody who's always preferred owning physical copies of games. I like the collectability aspect of it, being able to insert discs, feel instruction manuals, and game cases in my hand. But I know some people definitely prefer this other format. It is a lot more convenient, it allows you to instantly access things, and a lot of times it does end up being cheaper. I mean, look at the amount of money a lot of people save by using streaming services like Netflix
Hey,
over
there's my
cable.
favorite aunt.
And as for my
Hey
feelings in terms
there.
of Verizon running it,
Need
well,
some help?
in my experience, both the
Yeah,
big two cable
sure.
companies in
Oh, can I
Fios
see your
and
email?
Comcast both
I mean,
have some
yeah, sure.
general issues with
I mean,
customer
I could
service
see you,
sometimes, so I don't know how I
like,
feel about that, especially
I guess
considering
just one of the
in
two.
my experiences, Sony, Nintendo, and Microsoft all have really good customer service. So watching a big hitter come into that gaming market in
Hey
some
there.
way that isn't so good with that,
Are you
at
in
least in my
trouble?
experiences, is
Do you need
something
anything?
that
Not really.
I'm
I mean,
not
I'm a little
necessarily
down on
too
my luck,
happy
but no,
about
no,
the
no, no.
thought of,
I'm
but
fine.
there's not a
There
lot
are
I can do
problems if you
either.
What? No,
And
that's
what's
great.
especially
I'm
interesting
pretty
about
sure
this
when
is the
we came
games
over
they've
to visit,
supposedly
she's a nice
tested
girl. She is.
include some like
See
PlayStation
what I mean? It
exclusive
makes them
titles. They
beautiful.
tried
What?
Fortnite, Red Dead
Uh,
Redemption 2, God of War, and Battlefield
hey there.
5. So how they were testing God of War when it's a
What is
PlayStation
it?
exclusive title, unless they were just like using
What?
it to
You
see
can
how
tell me.
well it could stream, is a little bit odd to me. I'm guessing they don't plan on actually
The
using that
past few
test in their streaming
years,
service since once more it's
you
a
helped me
PlayStation
through
exclusive.
college, and
But
working
I'm
here,
also interested to see that these are
sacrificing
AAA
so
titles, so if
much,
they're
and
getting success with that,
asking for
that's
nothing.
pretty impressive. I'm going to be
It's
curious to
just
see
silly
how
how
this
people
works
just
out.
don't
I'm
look.
going to be sticking by my
He's
physical
right.
copies, but I know for a lot of people this is a much more
5
affordable
years ago, you
option.
walked
I know
in,
growing up, if I was able to
totally
say shell out
inspired
like
by the
20
gifts you
bucks a month
bought.
to play whatever games I wanted in a
Now
Netflix
it's
type of
you
fashion,
who
only with a
inspires
bigger
me.
library, rather than spending
Thank
like
you
60
for
bucks twice a
everything.
month to buy two physical copies, that
Here's
would
to
have been
many more
really
years of
appealing to
service.
me. So that's going to wrap it up for today's New Bark news feed. Be sure to let me know all of you guys' thoughts and comments in the comment section down below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe. If not, constructive criticism is always welcome. And I'll catch you guys next time with some more New Bark news.